Today I'm making the trouser pants for this jacket. I'm making them with black denim fabric. I made a mock-up just to check for fit, and it fits pretty good. So I think it'll work with this type of fabric. Here's my cutting layout. Cutting on the grain of the fabric. The grain is this line that's parallel to the selvage of the fabric. And then after I cut my pieces out, I'll be doing little 1/8 inch clips on the notches so that I can match them. And I'll be marking the pleats and anything else that I need to mark on the pattern. I'm making the cuts on a single piece of fabric because the pants are divided into the left fronts and left backs because of the way that it closes on the side. And even the facings are cut on a single piece of fabric. I measured the seam allowances and it's 1/4 of an inch. I checked all the seams and they're all 1/4 of an inch except for this part here, which I'll be showing that individually. So my machine is set for 1/4 of an inch seams. And then after I do the other dart, I'll be attaching along the seat pant. I made my darts and I sewed the crotch seam on the back, 1/4 of an inch, and then I serged it to finish it. The next thing I'm going to do on this pair of pants is attach the back waistband facing. This is pretty simple. When you attach it, this is the right side, and of course you're going to attach it right sides together. So that's how it's going to end up. The right side is on the right side and the left on the left. It's symmetrical anyway, but just to be sure. I attached my waistband on the back. Next thing I'm going to do is attach the fronts here. Serge it after attaching it. And this flap here, I'll be marking on the left back pant. Now that the front is together, I'll be attaching the front waistband I'll be attaching it all along the top first, then serge the bottom, or you can serge the bottom of the waistband first and then attach it. But for now, I'm just attaching it on the top and doing the serging on the bottom. Here's the front, the facing. I'm gonna trim this seam now. Sew your facing along the sideline, only up to this line. So you're gonna leave this part loose. So in this case, I'm just sewing along here to here and stop at that line, not going down further. So let me just show you on the pattern because it's easier to explain. On the left side, the back, I already made a little snip here on the fabric. So I'm gonna, making sure that I don't catch anything else, I'm gonna serge down this edge. Once you've serged your seam, your closing seam, you're gonna fold this back. And I'll do a little top stitch over that. Catching the facing. And then on the front, I made this stitch along here, only up to the end of the opening. And I've trimmed along the top. Now I'm going to trim along the side, making sure that you don't trim past that opening line. Clip my little corner. And trim until there. And then flip it. Now that we're done with doing those sides facings, you're gonna attach the pants along this edge. So now I've sewn the side that doesn't close first. And the reason I did that is because I want to do this top stitching along the facing. And if you do it in the flat, it is so much easier than closing it and then having to deal with that. And what you can do is you can mark it on the top side. Can do like tracing paper, or you can cut this and trace it along those lines. But I'm just gonna go ahead and follow the edge, sew it on this side, and just follow this edge. It'll come out in a nice shape. And again, just make sure that you don't catch that little bottom side over here. You want to sew just up to there, up to the opening, the top stitching, because it also calls for top stitching on the very top. Now I'll pin the sides and sew along this side, and when you're sewing here, what I do is I flip that, or make sure that you start here so that when you open it, it's like this. It's really hard to explain. But catch all your seams right here. I made sure to mark my seam on this side because, as you can see, it starts off, it doesn't start off at 1/4 of an inch, it goes in. And then it tapers off to 1/4 of an inch. So I finished the side seam. I had to go back and make it a little bit higher because I made it too low. And I serged the side. And this is what you should end up with. I also pressed it. It's gonna look like this. This is where your snaps are gonna be, or your snap. And then right here, I'm gonna do a little reinforcement stitch, just a little tiny zigzag, so it doesn't rip when you're putting it on the doll. And lastly, well, almost lastly, I'm going to mark the hems. And I usually mark the hems before I serge this edge, and I press them so that way I can measure them correctly and they'll be even. So mark your hems, stitch along on each pant leg, and then we're gonna pin it from the crotch and sew from leg to leg, and your pants will be finished. Now my hems are pressed and ready to serge, and then top stitch. So I serge the bottom now, and I usually go back and make a crease like this because I want to sew my hem across the top, and I'll sew along the a little bit under the crease, so that I know that I'm catching the seam. You can always seam it this way. You won't have that problem. But they say that when you seam from the top, it looks better, which I find that it looks the same. The only time it doesn't look good is like over here in my case, I forgot not to use my thread trimmer on the machine because it makes like a little knot and it looks like a little bird's nest there. But I can go back and take that off later. My hands are done, so I will be sewing the middle seam. Make sure you match your seams and that you also match your notches. I like to start at the bottom to make sure that my hems are even, so they're not overlapping. Or rather uneven at the bottom. I don't want. These two notches are important to match them because here on the pattern where it says stretch, that just means that that fabric, that side is a little bit ever so slightly longer. Grab my pins. So once you match this notch and the top one in between here, see how there's a little puckering there? When you're sewing it, you stretch it so that it comes together. So I'll be sewing then and serging, and I'll be done except for the snap. I sewed the seam and serged it, and now I'm just hiding my serger threads. And there's easier ways to do this. I'm just doing it the hard way. That doesn't work, so I'm just gonna cut it and use the good old fray check. And then I'm going to flip it around, and that'll be the end of that. So here's the finished product. I did a little tiny top stitch over here on the hem, going across this way, pushing the seams towards the back. And there's a symbol on the pattern that shows you to do that. Next, I'll be putting the snap right here. I'm getting rid of the little bird's nest that I made there. It fits pretty good along the back. And it fits pretty tight on the thighs. So I recommend that, you know, if you're using, this fabric doesn't stretch at all. If you're using jean fabric, maybe one that has a little bit of elasticity on it is better. But all in all, it looks good. I'll be making some stain prevention leggings with really thin stretchy fabric. And I pre-washed this fabric anyway, just in case. I don't think it will stain, but sometimes the thread stains even though the fabric doesn't stain. And I would love it if you leave any comments on what you would like to see, if this was helpful at all, so I can continue making more videos if this is something that's going to be helpful for anyone. I'm not a teacher, you know, I'm just someone who likes sewing for dolls. And I love Danny Choo's patterns. So thank you for watching. See you next time.